Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Next Door Net Admin. I am in a recording booth type thing at my office at the moment, largely because due to a whole bunch of work that was unexpected on Saturday, I didn't actually get around to my regular filming. So you get a little short thing from my workplace instead. And what I thought was, since it's what occupied my time on Saturday, maybe I'll just talk a little bit about what I was doing and some of the troubles that were experienced and hopefully, fingers crossed, fixed. So at this particular client site that I was working with, we have a Cisco Catalyst switching infrastructure. Nothing terribly fancy, but we do have multiple VLANs in place, and the central set of switches is a stack, 3 switches linked together as a single unit. And I've been having some problem with 2 of the switches, units 2 and 3, becoming separated from the stack. Switch 1 is still there, it's still online and processing traffic, but it says that units 2 and 3 have been removed. Why, I don't know. It's not like they've been physically removed. The cable's still there. Everything's good. And if you reboot units 2 and 3, they come back online. So I have no idea what the problem there is. Saturday, we were trying to do some more troubleshooting on that. And I noticed that the switches seemed very touchy. As in, if somebody reached behind the unit to plug in a console cable, the stack would suddenly reconnect. And then when they take their hand out, it would disconnect again. Stacking cables are screwed into place, so there shouldn't be any play in the connection to the switch at all. So the fact that it's flicking in and out like that makes me suspect that the cable itself is faulty. It's unusual, but it happens. And this was backed up by the switch saying there's a high hardware interrupt rate that's happening on these ports, the stacking ports connecting units 2 and 3. And I went, okay, well, if there's a high hardware interrupt rate and there's a lot of errors going on there, then theoretically it might knock, because it's on the link between 2 and 3. So it's possible that it could knock both 2 and 3 out of sync or offline, cause so many errors that it locks up. I don't know. But that's the one that's having the problem. And eventually, the cable, as we were troubleshooting, it just went dead entirely. We were able to use one of the other stacking cables, because it's a ring. We were able to move one of the cables to connect 2 and 3, and that seemed to work fine. It was pretty stable. So, okay, it's very likely a failed cable. And we sorted that out. I went, okay, everything's good now. And the technician on site said, okay, well, while I'm here, I want to move some of the power connections to move it to a UPS, a different UPS. Change the connections up. Okay. I said, sure, that's fine. I don't see any reason why you couldn't do that. Well, he did, and the entire switch stack went offline. And it didn't come back. And this is not expected whatsoever. And I'm sitting there going, okay, well, what's going on? I don't understand it. Something else that was really perplexing, shall we say, is that there's 2 servers involved here. And one is apparently connected through our backbone switch, which is a single switch. And one is connected through the actual local switch stack. The local switch stack is offline. But the server that's connected to the backbone switch is offline. I don't understand how that is. So once we bring the backbone switch online, the server goes off. I'm like, why is the server connected to the backbone switch offline? And it says, oh, I know why. We just need to restart the main switch stack. When you restart the main switch stack, this server comes online connected to the backbone switch. But when this switch stack boots back up again, this connection disappears. I'm like, that's not how that should be. And I looked at the configuration for the backbone switch, and I'm like, there's only a single trunk here. So does that mean we only have 2 network ports on this server? He said, no, there's 4. The 10 gigabit ports and then the 1 gigabit ports. Okay, well, I know how I would set these up. 2 10 gigabit ports would be for the virtual machines. He said, oh yeah, the virtual machines are fine. They're online the whole time. Okay, so the virtual machines are actually the connection to the backbone switch. Where's the host connections going? We troubleshoot that, and I realize the host connections are on the main switch stack. Partially on the main switch stack. There's two lines. One line goes to switch 1, which is always online and has been working fine, and the other connection goes to one of the other switches that has been going offline. And that explains it. Because if you remember from switch embedded teaming, Microsoft doesn't have LACP on these anymore. So there's nothing to tell Windows that one of these connections is good or bad. All it can do is try and make sense of it all because it's switch independent teaming no matter where it is. So if you actually take one of those failed units offline, then Windows goes back to using the connection to switch 1. But for whatever reason, once the stack reconnects, it says, okay, so the connection to switch 1, that'll be my backup connection. And it starts sending traffic over the other units, which might not be operational. Okay, so I fix that and but it's still not coming online. And I'm going, why is it not coming online? That's when I realize all the VLANs have disappeared off of this switch stack. How does that happen? The VLANs are kept in a VLAN database on a Cisco Catalyst switch, VLAN.dat. Apparently, this file somehow got corrupted or lost in between all of the reboots that were going on for troubleshooting and then another reboot for switching power up or something. I don't know how it happened, but the VLAN database got corrupted and lost. Well, there's a kind of a big problem with that. The management VLAN is what exchanges VLAN information. Because I'm using VTP in this environment because it's a Cisco Catalyst environment. VTP, or VLAN trunking protocol, is essentially a way for switches to share a VLAN database. You can add a VLAN on one switch and it will dynamically spread to all the other switches in the network. It simplifies administration because you don't have to go to every single one of 20 different switches to configure it with a particular VLAN. Cool. This can also lead to some issues. For example, there's a VTP domain that you're supposed to set to something other than null, and there can be a VTP password as well. If you have a VTP password, great. That adds a little bit of extra security so people can't just plug random devices in and either use a null domain name or guess the domain name for the VTP and poison your VLAN database, or snoop on your VLAN database for that matter. But it's also possible, if you take a switch out of service and do some testing on it and everything and clear its VLANs incorrectly, then when you plug it back into the network, it has a higher configuration version because it's been updated a bunch in troubleshooting and testing. And then when you plug it back into the network, because it now has a higher configuration version, its version of the database, which you cleared, spreads across the network and all your VLANs go away. It's sometimes called a VTP bomb. But in this case, that hadn't happened because the management VLAN was not present on the switch because the VLAN database was not there. And because we got a little chicken and the egg problem here, without a management VLAN, the switch can't bring its IP interface up, and if it doesn't have its IP interface up, then it doesn't have an updater ID and can't receive VTP properly. Okay, but I'm thinking to myself, I want to make sure that when I bring this back online, that I don't accidentally VTP bomb myself. I need to make sure that this has everything properly cleared. So I check the configuration revision number, okay, it's at 16, something nice and high. And I have a VTP server among my other switches on the network that are still okay. Updates can only be sent out from VTP server devices. If your switches are in VTP client mode, then they only receive VLAN updates, they do not send them. And typically I would set most of them to VTP client. If I didn't have another server as a backup somewhere on the network, I would just toggle it from client to server temporarily so that it could update the primary switch stack. But I made sure that it was there. Okay. I can see in my configuration that all of the ports still have the correct VLAN number set. It's just that the switch doesn't have it defined. Okay. So update the VTP domain on the switch stack, update the VTP password on the stack so it can receive it, but it's still not receiving it. And I think about it a little bit more and I go, oh, right, because it doesn't have the VLAN database. So even though I've set the VTP information, it's not working correctly. Okay, I need to go in and manually define my management VLAN temporarily, just enough so that it knows this is an actual VLAN. Bring your VLAN interface up. And once it does, then it receives the VLAN database, reconfigures everything to the way that it should be on the network, and hey, presto, everything starts working at that point. These are the things that happen when you are mixing a console connection so that you can see boot messages, or an SSH connection that you would use typically. I would normally use SSH, and if I had been, I would have gone, well, the switch stack is not coming online. I don't know what's going on. But because I was using a console connection specifically to watch boot messages, I missed for an embarrassing amount of time that it didn't actually have an IP address anymore. I was too busy troubleshooting the actual stacking function of the switch. And then when I realized that, hey, all your VLANs are gone, then it became a lot easier to fix because that's a different issue. So yeah, that was all told. With all the rebooting and new software versions and troubleshooting the cables and then having power swap and then having to essentially troubleshoot everything from scratch because it wasn't coming back online, plus the server and everything else, that was a substantial portion of my Saturday. And fortunately, I had a replacement cable that I'd already kept as a spare. So we were able to grab that cable, put it in, confirm that that cable's working, it's a stable connection, and that's a great thing. So it was successful, and fingers crossed, yeah, that fixes it. But yeah, it was quite a bit of time on my Saturday, which is why I didn't get a normal film done for you guys. So hopefully this impromptu glance into the kinds of things that a network admin ends up troubleshooting has been interesting to you. As always, if you have any other thoughts on things that you would like to see me talk about or things that you would like to see me demonstrate, maybe you want me to talk about something a little more theoretical, maybe you want to know more about what I do day to day, who knows? Whatever it is, if you have something that you'd like me to mention or something that you'd like more insight into, just let me know right down there in the comments section. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. I am your next door net admin, and we will see you next time.